Welcome to 10 Talks, real conversations for champions with champions, where a champion life is a 10 life. Thank you for joining our team today. I'm Carlette Patterson, your head sports life coach at the Life Training Academy, and it's our desired outcome to share our passion for sports life coaching by training you to live a 10 life. You and your life matter. Let's get coached. Hi, team. Welcome to 10 Talks. Today's guest is somebody that wants to share really what is it about well-being? How can we implement this into our personal, professional, and philanthropic life? So today you're going to get to have a conversation with Anne, who is in the corporate workforce and really has learned a lot as we have transitioned through all the amazing things that 2020 has brought us. Some fabulous and some not so fabulous, so much learning. And the most learning that I feel I'm doing and the guests that we're sharing with, it's all about our well-being. What is showing up for us in our lives? How are we really understanding this change? And how is our life different because of the new change that has really happened in our world? So Anne, welcome to 10 Talks. Thank you for our conversation today. And we want to start just with the power of your story. So let our guests know just really who you are and what's important to you.
Okay, thank you, Carlette, and it's a pleasure to be here with you today, as always. So I think the punchline for me is this year was an important anniversary for me because I actually have done 40 years in the corporate world, which is sort of unbelievable to me. But September the 1st marked the 40-year anniversary in the corporate world. And over those years, I have been in 3 different industries. I've worked on 2 different continents. But the other piece of this is at the end of this year, I am actually hanging up my full-time corporate boots and moving to hopefully my next act, my next season, however one wants to talk about it. So after all these years, it's time for me to pass the baton on to somebody else, and I'm looking forward to getting involved in new things. So that's sort of the overall punchline, but just a little bit more history. I am in human resources. I have been pretty much all my corporate life, and I'm currently the Chief Human Resource Officer for a large global organization where we have about 35,000 employees around the world. And it's been a great career for me. I've been very fortunate. Started my career in London and moved to the States 30 years ago. So I've actually lived half my life in the UK and half my life in the States. And during that time, I've had a family, 4 children, and have kept working throughout it. So I've been one of the fortunate ones who's, I think, managed to balance somehow work, family, and everything else that goes into the mix. So I think that pretty much sums it up.
Anne, thank you for that introduction. And I just want to start with some words of wisdom. You know, you have been in your career, as you've said, for 40 years. What a gift, what a gift to the corporation, to you. I mean, that's really the power of finding something that you want to do and training to really be your best at it. So in this season of life, so many people may be thinking about something new, may want to get into something different. What would be your words of wisdom to anybody today that's starting to look for something new?
Well, you know, of course, when you look, sometimes it doesn't come your way. It's the unforeseen that's for me at least has been the joy of life, in the sense of those unforeseen things that provide opportunity. For instance, when I had the opportunity to come to America, it wasn't on my to-do list. It wasn't on my I must get to America. A window opened up, and I sort of went and opened that window wider, and here I am, and have never looked back. And I think it's when those unforeseen things that arise that you know, really just opportunity and being prepared to take the risk. I really didn't know. Actually, when I came to the States, I didn't know anybody in the States really, and I certainly didn't have a network in terms of from a work point of view. And so I had to establish all of that from scratch, which was actually quite uncomfortable. it's not, networking hadn't been something that I was used to doing, and I really had to steel myself to pick up the phone and call people and introduce myself and all those things that I think most of us find unnatural in many ways, particularly when we're wanting something. But it was, through that I was very fortunate, and then through the network eventually got my first job in the States, and that job and that company became my family. I was home away from home, and they really were really important to me. So, but I think the main thing is, and of course it's a strange time given what's going on in the world. So perhaps some of the norms in the past, might be different right now, but I do think that being prepared to take a risk is important. Whilst I've remained in human resources, I've changed significantly the industries I've been in. I started my first 10 years in retail in London. And then when I came to the States, I moved into the biotech and medical device industry. Very, very different. And for the last 14 years or so, I've been in industrial manufacturing, which doesn't sound the sexiest of places to be, but in fact has provided a marvelous insight to the world and a great career. And so I think it's keeping your aperture wide in terms of the possibilities and taking a risk. Those would be my words of wisdom at this point.
Well, and I really respect how you have a craft of being in human resource, which certainly has certain skills of being a people person and really being for people. And yet you've been open to how am I going to use something that is my passion or my craft? And so, being open to transferring to different industries or just being curious about it, yet also really making sure that you're showing up somewhat a champion inside those industries because you're committed to really becoming your best self, understanding your skills. How did you do that? And how would you recommend somebody doing that if they're training for that right now?
Yeah, well, I think that one of the things about changing industries is that you learn so much. Yes, I came in each time I've changed industry, I've come in with a skill set and a knowledge base, which has continued to grow, obviously, over the years. But I have got so much, perhaps more out of it than they've got out of me, in terms of learning about, I didn't know anything about the medical device or biotech industry, nothing. And it turned out to be absolutely incredible and fascinating, and knowing what, the passion of the people who are in that industry. And I feel very fortunate that even though I'm not a scientist, and, a lot of the things that we talked about, quite honestly, flew over my head, particularly when they were talking about new R&D. But it didn't matter because, I had the fundamentals I was able to bring, and the knowing that at the end of the day, what ties all of this together for me was how do you create the best environment for people to do their best, quite honestly. And it's interesting, industrial manufacturing would never, when I say that, even as I say it to myself, it's sort of like, ooh. But it's so global. The last 14 years have worked with my 35,000 colleagues, most of whom are actually outside the US, all over the world, from the emerging markets through to the wealthiest markets. And that continuous learning and seeing life through their eyes and so on, and what's important to them, has just been just incredible for me. And so I think what I would say, often people say, well, I'm really not interested in that particular industry or whatever it might be. And the fact is, there's something to be gained by most industries. Maybe a couple that I would stay away from, but for the most part, you can learn a lot and just add to who you are.
Well, it comes back to relationships. I mean, in our life, no matter what we're doing, it's really kind of who we're with that we're doing it with, and establishing those relationships. And as you talked about, when you moved here from, into the US, you didn't have a big network. And in this day and age now, in terms of our times changing, our networks have changed. We're not able to get out and maybe do what we usually could do, and the things that we could do to really connect, and missing connection in our relationships is huge for our well-being. And so what would you say is one of the gifts that you've learned from human resource that you want to give to the world as they think about, interviewing for jobs or coming into a company, or, it feels as if we all go through the human resource department at some point. And, that's a person, right? Those are people that are looking out for us rather than it just being this department. So any gift that you'd like to give from that perspective?
Yes, and human resources, funny, you're right. At some point or other, most people go through it. And, there's a better for worse. And some people have very preconceived ideas, actually, of the notion of HR and what we're about. And we're really about doing the best for our company and the best for our people and providing the platform that allows people to do their best. I think that, in terms of words and wisdom, what I found is most people want to help others. And particularly when we're thinking about the network, I always say to my team is, working on your network is part of your job. It's part of your professional job, is to make sure that you keep your network vibrant, alive, and well-oiled, whatever that looks, and it will change, over the years. And I found that actually over the last several months, the networks that I'm involved in, not so much at the individual level, but at the collective level, groups that I'm involved in, have done a fabulous job of keeping people connected through meetings online. In fact, I would say we've met more than ever, and you're getting to see regular people show up. Of course, we want to see each other live, but you can still do it. And I think people have more time. And I actually always say, when you reach out for help, for the most part, people really, they want to help. They really do. And I actually just had a situation happened this week where somebody had been looking for a job and had certain limitations to them, and a job that totally different than my industry, and through connections was able to connect them up, and wouldn't you know, they got the job actually. And there's nothing that makes me feel better, by the way. I mean, there is nothing that makes me feel better. So use the network, and it doesn't have to be the HR person, it's whoever you know.
Well, and we would call that the power of team, just really making sure you're igniting that power of team, and just the really the investment that we make in ourselves, how that pays off by getting involved in groups and getting involved in organizations, volunteering from that perspective, really making sure that you are getting out there and mixing it up with people that share a passion and share something with you, just so we're learning something new. And a lot of times people feel like they can't or they don't have time. And I really value your words of like, make time for that, prioritize it, because that's really who we're going to be able to talk to if we need something, and also how we can help other people in terms of, we're here to serve and support. How can we help? And I know that we got to meet each other through our coaching work, and it's an honor to be your coach. And certainly from our network, we're a word of mouth and, recommendation business. And so that network has been incredibly valuable for me. And that's how I got to start working with you. I've loved every minute of it. It's been a 10, and, love serving as your coach. And you've gotten involved in our work as well from a well-being perspective. We're launching our Chief Wellbeing Officer program, and you have been a huge asset to us on the kind of the development team. And now you're going through our course with it, that we're running our pilot course and learning all kinds of information. So what would you share that you just want to, from a well-being perspective? Let's start from kind of where you were in your career in terms of understanding well-being and kind of where you are now.
Yes, and it's amazing the timing, as you, Carlette, have been putting together the Chief Wellbeing Officer concept, along with the training that goes with that, because who would have thought that we'd have such a year where it's become so important. Well-being within an organization has not been words that I think have been universally used historically. I mean, we would talk about motivation, and productivity and all those things. And certainly we've been very aware of wellness. And that's been a pretty big concept, how to keep the workforce fit. Literally fit and healthy and looking after themselves. But that's been at a sort of physical level. And I think that obviously the aspects of mental health and so on are now this year in the forefront of everybody's mind, and haven't necessarily been so in the past, at least in the things we might have considered, but it was really pushed to one side. Maybe you had an EAPs that employees could, take advantage of and so on. But now, over the last several months, while we've all been in this very unusual and confined environment, it is a very serious issue of how people are coping with unknowns. We're all thrown in this together. And so I've really appreciated working with you and the rest of the team of coming to realize that well-being is way beyond just the fitness aspect, the physical aspect, and into the mental aspect of it. Starting with really a true understanding of who you are and what you stand for and what's important to you as an individual. And it's different for everybody, obviously, but grounding yourself in those things. And so I think it's been an opportunity to really be self-reflective and understand yourself, so that as you always say, Carlette, what are your 10 moments? What are the things that bring you joy, and how do you really concentrate on those aspects as opposed to the things that are downers? Now, we all know life isn't a bed of roses, so it's clear. But I think trying to pick your way through the that sort of garden, if you like, of the red roses and the weeds, and sort of figuring out how you keep to things that bring you joy. So that it's a much broader concept, well-being, than I had thought of it in the past. And I think the tricky thing about it is it means something different to everybody. And so just trying to sum it up of this is what well-being is sort of like, okay, it's sometimes it's hard to articulate, because whatever I articulate may be different for somebody else. And those are some of the aspects. And I think we're at the start of this journey in terms of embedding the notion of well-being into the corporate life.
And what would you say is the value of really starting to honor well-being and it being our own definition? I mean, that's exactly what our whole program is about, and really is all of our coaching is about, that is defining what words that we use all the time. What do they mean to you? So for instance, success, what does success mean to you? Well-being, what does well-being mean to you? And really the program that we're excited about launching and just really giving to the world is about, yes, let you start to define what is well-being to you. And as a team of people in a corporation and in your family, how can we all support our differences with our definitions of well-being and come together in a way that feels like we're supported, that we belong, and that we're optimally performing? I mean, that's the beauty of our well-being, is that we want to, from our expertise, we come from a sports background and we're combining sports, business, and life. And how do we bring that combination together so that we're all learning from each other? And so that's the team that you've joined in our training for Champion Wellbeing. So what have you learned from the combination of being completely outside of your corporation and your environment and coming into ours from a team member perspective?
Yeah, it's been great to learn. As you say, you are very embedded in sports, as indeed many other people on the team. And as I've said to you many times, I'm the least sporty person you might come across. But I've appreciated. I think the thing about well-being is it really gets to treating everybody as an individual, which may say, well, that's obvious, isn't it? But within an environment where you have hundreds, maybe thousands of people, you can lose sight of that. I think the team aspect has always been important in corporate life, as it is in sports. We talk about being a team player, we talk about the team, those things are important, but I think we've paid at times less attention to the individual. And what I see, from the sports analogies is it's obviously all about team and so on, but it's about individual coaching of what, and everybody, whilst there's a common methodology, the actual needs of any individual are specific to them. And I think that that's been interesting for me to learn more about that. And I think the other aspect of it is that in terms of performance, obviously in sports, it's pretty finite. You either win or lose, you either do well, and it's very clear for everybody to see. Less so in the corporate world, how to measure success other than obviously on a profit and loss, but that's in an aggregate for the whole corporation. And so how, one of the things that I realize in sports is the continuous coaching, it's continuous feedback, and it's in the moment. Whereas, and I think that's something for in corporations to aim for. And I think we're making progress, moving away from the sort of the dreaded annual performance review to a much more, continuous type of environment. But I think the corporate world can learn a lot from sports from that point of view, and also being more specific. Often the feedback we're giving is trying to, often looking at people's gaps, shall we say, and sometimes those gaps aren't fillable, and actually concentrating on the strengths, I think is a really positive way for us to go. So, and I think if we can just make that continuous feedback loop part parcel of the cadence of corporate life, I think it will really hold us in good stead.
Well, and that's how we feel that we improve in sports, is that number one, everybody has a coach. I mean, you wouldn't, from the minute you're a little tyke and you say you want to play a sport, I mean, the first thing you do is get a coach. And we think about, business and life. To me, it's much more valuable. As much as I'm a huge sports person from that perspective, I still feel that my life is much more valuable than a game that I play. And yet we don't always have a coach for our life. We don't always have a coach in business. We don't always have a coach that's kind of cheering us on and coaching us up in terms of training us on how to have the skills that we need to get better. And so really having that new thinking of that feedback is for me and it's actually helping me be better rather than it be something that is negative that's being pointed out.
Yes, and I don't know if I've told you this, but you are the first coach I've ever had, and it's sort of ironic that it's at the very back end of my corporate career. But and I always thought that I would be sort of somewhat, I'll say, uncoachable by a formal coach. I mean, not to say not to say that I knew everything by any means, but I just sort of thought, I can see my gaps, my flaws pretty well. I think I know who I am, and then I'll try and hide some of those things and, muscle my way through. But it's been having you, as I've been particularly working through and gearing up for this transition of coming to hand over the reins of my current role and making it good, not just for me, but everybody around me, my team, you have given me insights and support that frankly I never realized I needed. And so I think that I'm a big supporter now of I've used coaching for many of our executives. It's not like I haven't been trying to support them, just never did it for myself. And when particularly going through big moments, for me, it's this transition is just very important to understand really what's going on. So thank you for everything, Carlette.
Well, thank you for the honor of being a coach. I know for those of us in the profession, we just feel so blessed and honored to be able to be on people's teams and really help take them through some of the biggest moments in their life. I mean, that's really what's so powerful about coaching, is that we stand beside you and we really coach you up to go out and play your best game, in your life, and to go for the things that you want, and have loved every minute of our coaching and really value you coming on to our team. Another component I want to talk about is that, you not being a sports person and yet really starting to be able to use the methodology of sports and understand the coaching and the training component because as we introduce well-being, that's what we want to bring to the world, is that, coach and train, get coached and train for your well-being, because when you do that yourself, you show up a better teammate because you're showing up kind of in shape and ready to go. And that's where we talk about sports, is that you've got to take great care of yourself to make sure that you're bringing a great self to ignite with that team versus just team performance. And so what have you learned from the methodology of sport that is something that was a big surprise for you?
All the statistics. Yes, I mean, my family can, especially, well, no, all my family are all quite sports mad. At least they like watching it. They're always quoting stats and so on. I haven't a clue. So I've come to appreciate, though, the statistics. Of course, when we're talking about it, we're talking about it in terms of well-being. Where are you in the continuum of how you're feeling, and going back to what gives you joy, and really able to put some kind of measurement around it. That was very new thinking to me. In the past, I was much more black and white. Kind of like it or I don't, and that's helpful, because then you can. That measurement is something you can hold on to. And also, I think the variable where you always ask every week, how are the team feeling? And in a statistical sense, you always say, what's your stat, right? Or your life play. And so it's a remarkably simple but effective way of immediately seeing where everybody is. And this comes back to the individual of, when the team is getting together, you can't just assume that everybody's feeling fantastic on that particular day and ready to go, because life happens and other stuff is going on. So that has been really new thinking. And I will admit, when you first started talking about it, a year and a half ago, I thought, what is this? I don't, it doesn't resonate. After all this time, it resonates completely. So, the power of coaching again, right? And learning, and for myself.
Well, and being coachable, right? Trying something new and seeing if if it works for you or if it doesn't work for you. And so that is what's really valuable. What we're committed to is making sure that every person can anchor in their truth. And the truth is, I may, have not gotten a good night's sleep, and I may have had a, disagreement with my kids or my partner. And so showing up at work and, maybe I'm not my best self, but I'm going to be my best self for the team. So, just because I've had a rough night or I'm personally not doing that well, it doesn't mean that I'm not going to perform for my team. What it means is that we're acknowledging the truth is I'm struggling today. And if you know that, you can help me and be for me in a way that really helps me be a better teammate rather than me having to fake it. And, you're going to pick up that I'm maybe not as good as I usually am, or I might be a little bit on edge. And if we have that opportunity to express that and know that before we start our work, all of a sudden we're united and you're kind of taking care of me, or at least understanding why I might not be as quick as I usually am, or whatever it is. It's just, again, well-being is being for each other, really that honesty of I'm a human and I got good days and bad days. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to show up and be my very, very best for the team. So when we're thinking about well-being, we've broken it into 10 intelligences that we're training in. Again, we're coaching and training. And so one of the intelligences is love. And I know that was interesting for you as we really started to talk about this personally, professionally, and philanthropically, and also measuring it. What's our return on investment when we bring love into well-being? So what did you learn from that workout?
Yes, that was a tough one for me to get my head around, I have to say, because love is not a word that typically we use in the corporate world, and so I was really a head scratcher for me to begin with. But then realizing that the meaning of love, I mean, we're not talking about romantic or sensual love at this point. We're talking about something different, and I think we're talking about care, caring for each other, a deep caring for each other. But love is a word, it's funny, it's a triggering word in some ways, in a positive sense. You know, it's such a positive word, and yet it's like, what do you do with that in the work environment? So, but I've come to love the word love, even though I haven't used it within work. But I realize one of the things that I've always been pretty bad at is dealing with conflict. And I think many people shy away from it, and for all sorts of reasons. Trying to protect yourself, trying to protect the other person, whatever. And I realize that if you come from a position of love, caring deeply for your colleague, and actually let that be known. Let it be known that you care. And this isn't just about trying to win the day. It's about, because there is no one best way often of doing these things. But if it comes from a position of love, then I think it takes a lot of the heat out of things. And I still don't know exactly how I would use that word. I use the word love within the corporate environment, but I do feel that I would look for the opportunity and feel freer about using it than I would have done in the past. So it's new vocabulary for me within the corporate setting.
And so let's talk about another one, which is economic independence. I know that's something that you're very passionate about. You could say you love really setting people up for success and making sure that they are maximizing their earning potential, really taking care of themselves professionally from a career standpoint, from a financial standpoint. So what have you learned, and what's important that you really want to, not only have you used it in your career now, but I know that's something that you want to take into your next season and really give hope, give encouragement from a life advisement perspective, from anything that, it's important to you. And so let's talk a bit about that.
Well, it is important to me. And I think it was something that actually my mother used to talk about when I was a young girl, which was always, as I was still at home then, but to the importance of economic independence, particularly as a woman, but it's true for everybody. Yes. But I don't necessarily think that it's been historically top of mind for women, to the extent that I still have my own bank account. I've never been it's just one of those things, to always have that independence. But I think the thing is that within the work, we all have the same number of hours in any given day. And if you are in the work environment, and obviously my background in corporate life, that's what I know. So I'm sure it varies if you're earning a living in a different way. But within corporate life, I've always felt that you want to be doing work that you find satisfying and that you can do well and feel fulfilled in, but you also should be thinking about how do you maximize your earnings potential. And that's not about going and banging on the boss's door and always, asking for a raise every 3 months. In fact, that's likely to get you.
That's the opposite.
The opposite. No, it's really about understanding your value and what you can bring to the company and going for it, And so if you are at a junior level, how do you get if you think you have the capability, and go for it. I even think in places I haven't worked, but if I were in a McDonald's and working as just behind the counter, why not aim to be the store manager? Right. If I was in retailing, where I was for 10 years, albeit in HR, if I worked on the shop floor, why not aim to be running the department or going further? Because you have this knowledge that you've learned. It's really about understanding, grounding in your value. And particularly, I say this, particularly for women, I see that this is not something they're much more zoned into. Can they really do the job? Can they really do the job? And if they don't have some particular aspect of the experience, they'll often take themselves out of consideration. And that this whole thing comes back to economic independence. Go for your value, go for what you're worth, push it. I was never particularly ambitious. But once I was in the workplace and I saw what other people were doing, I thought, well, I could probably do that. And while I'm doing it, if I'm spending all these hours here, I may as well see if I can earn some more, because that will give me some other senses of freedom. Not that money is everything, but it's, you know, it's important. So that's a message I would say is, don't be shy about that. There's nothing wrong with having that ambition and sort of pushing on to the next level up.
So what would you say are some winning strategies for doing that? Because as we were just alluding in, you know, part of our conversation, there's ways to do it that work and ways to do that don't work. And so, you know, certainly that passion and ambition to go for it can sometimes rub people wrong, or, you know, people can go for it too soon or be too aggressive. I mean, there's all these things that come into play to really be able to win that promotion or win that understanding. And I love the word value in terms of really understanding our value. I also want to just introduce understanding the power of practicing our craft and really getting good at it, so that when we go for it, we're bringing great value to the company or to the organization, whoever it is that we're asking for this opportunity to be able to improve and get better. I really, you know, respect that power of team coming in as, you know what, I'm ready for it and I'm here to learn. How do you keep that open mind, that open spirit, and yet also that great courage to go for it?
Yeah, well, you know, absolutely. And looking around and seeing what others are doing, beside, you know, those who are perhaps in the higher echelons, and seeing what they're doing and learning from them, being observant. I mean, obviously this comes from a position that you're doing your job well, you know, and that you're putting in the necessary energy and time to do that. And actually you're coming from a position of positivity. You know, what do people want? They want positive people around them, right? They want people who not only are capable, but bring an energy with it, and can do, and let's get the job done, and let's go for it together. These are, you know, the so-called sometimes intangibles, but they're incredibly important. And I think that nobody needs to wear their ambition on a sleeve, but people need to also, you know, you can let it be known by talking about other roles. You can make sure that your internal network, with however big or small your company is, or whatever that internal network is very important. You know, sometimes in the past, people have said, well, so-and-so got a job because they knew, because of who they knew. Well, yeah, well, that's part of the informal, that's important, right?
Well, they invested in knowing those people, right? I mean, that didn't just casually happen. That was an investment that they made, and also an investment they cultivated. So, I mean, relationships are so valuable from that perspective.
They absolutely are. They absolutely are. And that goes back to taking the time to do it. So it's all those things. And then the continuous feedback loop. I think there is absolutely lots to be gained by, you know, making sure that every few weeks you are sitting down with your manager, boss, whoever it is who's appropriate, and just sort of saying, okay, am I on track? What have priorities changed? How am I doing? What about, you know, and getting that feedback, and just making it part of your working life. And actually, you know, I've seen some of the most successful people I've worked with are people, even in the highest echelons, all the way up to CEO, are people who are prepared to always ask for feedback. And they always do. And to this day, I've worked with the most wonderful CEO over the last several years. He always is asking for feedback, and he is at top of his game. And I think that openness to, you know, just see and hear what others are thinking is really important. So you can, then you're true to yourself. You can be grounded. But yeah, so that's what I would say, Carlette, is. And at the end of the day, you know, if you feel like you're banging your head against a brick wall, then move on.
Yeah. Find someplace that wants you, right? I mean, that's another huge winning strategy. Like that alignment, again, back to well-being. You want to feel like you belong on the team. You want to feel like you have a purpose on the team. You want to feel like you can contribute. I mean, these are things that affect our well-being. If we feel like we have teammates that are for us, I mean, our environments are incredibly powerful. And are we the person that is making the team better, or are we the person that's not? I mean, that's a good question to be asking. And what kind of change do we want to make so that the well-being of our entire team, personally, professionally, philanthropically, what's going on at home, what's going on in my work environment, what's going on in my community, am I serving and supporting from a volunteer perspective? I mean, we bring us everywhere we go, and so many times we don't understand just the power of really who we are and how well we take care of ourselves, and it affects everybody that we're connected to.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So as we close from a champion well-being perspective, anything you want to add? We're very excited for your next season and all the things that you have going on. I know that you're still kind of just exploring all the tens out there and thinking about exactly what you want to do next. I know that serving women is the top of your list, and what a gift you're going to be to the world of women to really be able to help and support them in whatever it is that you choose to do. So what other words of wisdom would you like to share with us?
Well, yes, I mean, I have been incredibly lucky to have a very fulfilling career, to travel the world and met people from so many different countries. I feel very, very fortunate. And so anything that I can do to help others as, they're ascending. And I do have a particular sort of fondness, shall we say, for helping women. That's certainly not just women, but it's because it is still a little trickier, I will say. And particularly, it's interesting, during the pandemic, at the start of it, when we're all working from home, I actually thought that this would give great opportunity for women because it brings more flexibility. You're not having to commute, not having to travel right now. And I thought this is an opportunity for women. In fact, we're seeing to some extent the reverse being true, where a lot of the jobs that we've lost over the last 6-7 months have been heavily biased towards jobs that women are in. A lot of it being in the service industry, of course. And so I'm hoping, though, that as we come back to whatever is the new equilibrium in life, that I can help women to continue to do well in the workplace. And because, as I say, it comes back to that economic independence, which I just think is so important and helps not just them, but the families as well. So that's what I'm looking to do. I hopefully advisory work for other companies, maybe board work, who knows. But I think that what I would say, my words of wisdom is, just because I'm hanging up my corporate boots, or as some people will call it, retirement, it's just the start of a new stage and continuous learning. And that's what I'm looking forward to, from learning from others and seeing how I may best serve.
Well, Anne, that is beautiful. And, listening to you, there's one other thing that's near and dear to my heart that I want to invest just a little bit more time in, talking about that mom and the woman role. It's sad because as a woman, so many times, I know you've got 4 children. I have 3 children. I've been a single mom for 16 years at this point, raising all of my little women. And it's, our heart is with our family and our children. That's a big part of our heartbeat. And yet there's also that desire to really make a difference in the world and contribute economically. And, we all have this, as women, we have a lot of puzzle pieces that go on in our brain and that we want to do. And I just want to really talk about and also encourage women not to give up, because I think sometimes that's a game changer when we take ourselves out of the game because it just gets too hard, or we just think we can't really be who we want to be for our children. And as we talk about well-being for women, I want to just talk about that, process it a bit, because once we get out of the game, we never get back in kind of at that same level. So what would you say have you really learned from your life of raising four children as well as being in the workforce? I'm sure there were times you wanted to give up. I know there's been times when I want to give up. And yet I found a way to really just stay true to myself and keep contributing. What's worked for you?
Well, and what's worked for me, I mean, everybody has to come to their own decision. There's no right or wrong by any means. But I would say,
And there's no better or worse. I just want to bring that in. Like,
no,
whatever you have to find what and make peace with the decision that you do. I'm just saying, if you want to stay in it, we want you in it. Like, we want to be on your support team for that.
right. So, when I first had my four children, and I had a global job, I pretty much for the last 30 years had global jobs, which has entailed quite a lot of travel all over the world. At one point, I remember thinking, gosh, I am doing everything badly. I mean, I'm just, my job, my kids, the home, and so on. And I really did a lot of soul searching, because I knew that, obviously we love our families, but I also love my job. And I realized that I really had to talk myself into believing that I'm actually doing the best I can. And I'm doing the best I've got the best of all worlds. I've got a wonderful family, and I've got a wonderful job. And I will, and so, yes, certain things slip, but that's the way it is. Being organized. I mean, obviously, having a whatever the network is in terms of connection, to make sure that the kids, their well-being is always first and foremost in everybody's mind, of course. And so making sure that you have that network. And actually, for my case, your case, obviously, as you say, you've been single mother for 16 years. I was fortunate enough to have my spouse with me, who's always been incredibly supportive. And so just having that partner, whoever your partner is, if you're lucky enough to have that, that's great. That you're both on the same wavelength, you're not having to fight somebody else for what you want. And I think the other thing is, there are hard times, as you say, where you just sort of think, is it worth it? Battle through them, because the good times come again. And and actually you realize we're all in this together. You're not alone. Everybody's in it together, and everybody's circumstance is unique, obviously, but we're all in it together. And I really encourage women everywhere, have your cake and eat it too. It can be done.
Well, and I just want to talk about too, that time when we think we have to do it all ourselves, because I'm a huge believer in a support team, and really, getting those people around me that are for me, that are better at, doing some things with the kids than I am, really owning my strengths and engaging people that have strengths that are much different than mine, bringing them into my support team. How have you managed to really wrestle with that internal voice saying I'm not good enough, or I'm dropping the ball on too many things, or I should do it all myself? What's happened in your self-talk?
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of know thyself. So I realized early on that me going into the classroom, being a classroom mom or whatever it's called, or being the one to run the bake stand at the fundraiser, it was not me. There were other people who were much better at doing those things than me. And, every time I sort of tried a little bit of that, I thought I couldn't, I was klutzy and just somehow it just didn't fit. So I think part of it is letting go of some of those things that just, even though everybody else seems to be doing it, if it doesn't fit with you or your life or who you are or the time you have to give, let it go. And actually, what I came to realize is that, as guilty as I felt by perhaps lack of participation, other people looked at it through a different lens, and they were in sort of somewhat admiration for the fact that I had this fairly large career and so on, and didn't hold me. I don't think that they were trying to make me feel guilty at all. In fact, they were very sort of in their own perhaps unsaid way supportive. So I just be true to you, what fits. But the support network, you're absolutely right. Having all those numbers on the quick dial when you need somebody to step in. And I was very, very grateful to have a fantastic group of friends who, as well as my husband, who were able to do those things over the years.
So team, that's been our conversation. What a joy to have you, Anne, and what a diverse conversation, from motherhood to economic independence and well-being, and really finding who you are and owning who you are. And love the words of wisdom. Let go of whatever's not working for you. Let go of whatever other people have imposed on you that just really isn't you. The world needs you. We need you. The world needs you to really being your best self, living your best life. To me, that's the definition of well-being, personally, professionally, and philanthropically, and surrounding ourselves with the people that love and care about us, and really having those relationships and that support team. So team, it's up to you. Go out and have a 10-week and be a champion for your well-being, and know that there are people out there that really want to be on your support team and cheer you on. And we look forward to your next season. And thank you for all the work you're doing with our Champion Wellbeing program.
Oh, you're welcome, Carlette. Looking forward to continuing on with you.
Great. Thank you, team. Cheers. Have a great week. Thank you for listening. We'd like to get you coached up, so head over to iTunes and Spotify and hit subscribe. And remember, a champion life is a 10 life. You and your life matter. Create a life that you love, give hope to others, and be and choose nothing but 10s. Be you. The world needs you. Go to lifetrainingacademy.com to start your training and get coached.